Here in New York City, thousands of people have come into the streets. The fear is that the extermination campaign in Gaza is going to take its next step, and the 2.4 million people trapped in the largest ghetto, in the largest open-air prison in the world, are going to be pushed into the Sinai Peninsula, pushed out of their ancestral homeland, where the Palestinian people have lived for thousands and thousands of years, where there were Jewish Palestinians and Christian and Muslim Palestinians living in peace. But Netanyahu, Biden, and Blinken and the Zionist project are now trying to exterminate the people of Gaza. There's a potential genocide brewing. What is CNN saying? What is MSNBC and Fox News saying? They're complicit in this potential genocide of the Palestinian people. Thousands of people in New York City are warning against genocide, that the people of Palestine have a right to live in their land and the right to return to their homes, to the homes where they lived in 1948, the right of return. The Palestinian flag is out here in New York City, more powerful than ever, the ultimate symbol across the world for all oppressed people, for all colonized people. Gaza Strip is on the precipice of a genocide, of an extermination campaign. What role does everyone play in stopping these genocidal Israeli attacks that began not thousands of years ago, but in 1948? Since 1948, very similar to what happened to indigenous people here across the United States, the Lakota, the Seminoles, the Cherokees. So many people who admire them, who remember that history and mourn that history. That's what's happening right now in Palestine. Go into the streets, write your Congress people, be aware of what's happening. We cannot let the 2.4 million people of Gaza who are trapped right now, the Israeli government, their intention is to expel them or exterminate them in Gaza or expel them into the Sinai Peninsula. We cannot let that happen. Shame on Biden, shame on Blinken, shame on Netanyahu. This genocide is on their hands.
Good afternoon to my family members, friends, students. I wanted to address some of what we're not hearing in the U.S. media. And it's extremely, extremely dangerous because the lies, the misdirection, the half-truths, the overemphasis here, the complete censorship there is an essential ingredient in a genocide. If I've been using the word genocide of the Palestinian people, an extermination campaign against the Palestinian people, I'm not using those words lightly in any way. This is not a war, it was a slaughter. 1,300 victims of a Hamas terrorist attack doesn't justify the displacement, the annihilation, and the Holocaust of the 2.4 million people of Gaza. The mainstream U.S. news networks continue to insist that this is a war on Hamas. The people of Gaza, over half of them are children. They can't control Hamas and Hamas's actions. In terms of the 150 hostages, in terms of the 500 U.S. citizens who already lived in Gaza, many of them are probably already killed by Israeli airstrikes. This war is completely asymmetrical. White phosphorus, dropping white phosphorus on civilians. All the times we've been bombarded with chemical weapons here, chemical weapons there. The Israelis have dropped 6,000 bombs. That doesn't even include the past 24 hours. Just in the first 5 days of their retaliatory violence. That's more bombs than were ever dropped in any month by the U.S. military, the U.S. Air Force in Iraq. They insist that Hamas are hiding out in sophisticated tunnels. Gaza's been under siege since 1967, since the Six-Day War. It's been controlled by Israel. There's no way in, there's no way out except through Israel. Do not believe the lies and the half-truths. This is Netanyahu's moment. This is not supported by the majority of Israeli people. Many Israeli people, like us here in the United States, have been completely bamboozled to cheer on a genocide. In 10 years from now, all the intellectuals are going to write the mechanics of a genocide, how it happened, what Biden said, what Blinken said, what Lloyd Austin did. Right now, you have 2.4 million Palestinians. Gaza is twice the size of Boston. I mean, Boston's a tiny city. Boston's population is in, I think, the 650,000 range. You can correct any of my numbers if they're off, of course. So 2 nights ago, Israel said 2.4 million people. Now you have to come into the one. You're already trapped in the biggest ghetto in the world, in an open air prison. I don't think I'm allowed to say, concentration camp, but some sociologists and historians would argue that some of that language is correct. But are we going to mince words over language right now? As an entire people perish, the people I've most admired since I was 14 years old, and I learned about the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And for me, it hurts because many of my colleagues teach about the Cherokees and the Seminoles and the Wampanoags, and they admire indigenous people, and they know about boarding schools and genocide, and here we are, 2023, October, with an opportunity to at the very least, to quote the mayor of the ghetto, Bunchy Carter from Los Angeles, assassinated by the FBI in 1969. Even if you spit, do something. Raise your voice, use your social media, attend a local demonstration. Don't sit there with your arms crossed, reading CNN and MSNBC and believing these headlines. Look at Wall Street. With all of Netanyahu's pronouncements, Wall Street and stocks and Boeing and General Dynamic through the roof. That's the system you believe in? These settlers, these settler colonialists, these invaders of Palestine, they're taking advantage of the genocide in Gaza. They're killing Palestinians in the West Bank. Palestinians are a people, they're a nation, no different than Puerto Ricans, no different than Americans, no different than people in England. As long as there's one Palestinian that can breathe, they're going to fight for Palestine. I invited some friends, some colleagues, come join us at these demonstrations at the United Nations, at the Israeli consulate. I had a friend come. Stayed a few minutes and told me, he just left abruptly. He told me, one of the banners said, by any means, Palestine will be free by any means. I had to leave. Wasn't it Malcolm X that said, by any means necessary, black people had a right to be free of brutality, humiliation, police terrorism? People don't have a right to self-determination by any means necessary? First of all, those banners are from years and years ago. But the liberal consciousness has been so thoroughly indoctrinated. Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. Hamas is not the Palestinian people. There's no justification. This is an unarmed, indefenseless people, starved. They were starved before the events of a week ago. It's roughly the 1 week point as I speak right now. A starved people on the run, living amidst rubble and ashes. You want to keep Israel secure? You think Israel eliminating systematically since 1948 the indigenous population of Palestine, that keeps Israel secure? Have you seen the millions and millions of Iraqis, Lebanese, Syrians? They don't want a genocidal power in their neighborhood. They don't want a colonial settler state as a neighbor. Let's go deep into Jewish working class history. We got to go back into all this history. What's the history of Jewish life, of Jewish resistance in Poland, in Russia, in the Pale of Settlement, in France, in New York? in the Middle East, because people in Palestine, it didn't matter if you were Muslim Palestinian, Jewish Palestinian. This has nothing to do with religion. The United States has established their most powerful aircraft carrier in all of the Middle East, and they've called it Israel. The U.S. doesn't support Israel. This has nothing to do with Judaism or Christianity. Blinken, Biden, these individuals don't just have blood on their hands. They're not just enabling a genocide, they're overseeing it. Calling Gazans and Palestinians human animals, that's the rhetoric of the Israeli officials. I've never felt so acutely that fascism has arrived. Young people are being locked up in London for having the Palestinian flag. And despite that fascism, right now, hundreds of thousands of people are in the streets of London defying these fascist orders. Here in New York City, they keep us in pens so we can't move. The police surveil, curtail, surround us at every turn. In Paris, in France, they've outlawed the Palestinian flag on some level. And this or that person is going to say, well, it's not actually outlawed. It's, look, you can mince all the words you want. Genocide is genocide. Censorship is censorship. In Germany, they're shutting down Palestinian news sites. So they've somehow convinced you that Palestine is synonymous with terrorism. Is that what you would say about the Wampanoags, the Lakota Nation, the native people of Ireland, indigenous people everywhere? Do everything you can. The genocide is underway. It's very late. It's very late. I've been too censored. Raise your voice.